This hurts for me to watch. Like, he looks like he's about to get carpal tunnel just holding the camera right now. Today we're going to be talking about the Sony Fx30, and we're not going to be talking about the specs of the camera because I think it's a great camera. First of all, the only thing I don't like about the camera is that the 4K 120 FPS is in a crop mode in a Super 35 camera, which means you're going to be in pretty much Micro Four Thirds mode on that camera, which is going to pretty much make it impossible for you to get like a wide angle slow motion footage. So if you're someone like a real estate videographer, or if you're doing wedding videography and you want to get like a wide sweeping shot, that's going to be really hard to do with that camera. But besides that, it's a great, amazing camera. The problem I have with that camera, it's not just that camera, it's just the trend I'm seeing in the videography side of things, is that a lot of these video-centric cameras are coming out and they're just in photography camera bodies. Now, back in the day, if you bought a camera and you bought a photography camera, you would buy yourself, a photography camera like this a film camera, or if you're like, I don't know, a sports photographer, you would get yourself like a Canon 1D camera, and this is what your camera would look like. And if you're a videographer, you would get yourself a camcorder, which would look like something like this. This is actually the camcorder that me and my family used to record on back when I was a little lad. And this is what we, record a video on. And even to this day, the ergonomics of this camera are pretty amazing. And one crazy, amazing thing about this camera is that the screen on there is actually like, I'm like jealous of it because of, look how large this is. Like, the LCD monitor on this camera is so much bigger than what you get nowadays on these cameras. And most of these cameras nowadays, both photography and videography, they just give you like a tiny ass camera. But on these older cameras, they actually gave you a large screen to look at, so you can review your footage, and while you're recording, you can record with it. And this camera was made back in the 90s, and as you can see, it has a fully articulating screen, and it's a great screen, and it's a great camera. It has a viewfinder also. It's just a great camera all around. As the technology advanced, we get cameras like the Canon 5D Mark II, that was a photography camera, but it could also do pretty good video. And a lot of cinematographers started using that camera as like a B cam, or they would use it as a crash cam. So because of that reason, as the technology kept going, we started having hybrid cameras. And that's actually one of the cameras we're shooting with right now. We're shooting with the Sony a7 IV camera right here. And this camera I love because both in photography and videography, this camera completely excels at. This is where the problem lies, in my opinion, is that we're taking these amazing cameras that have amazing video specs and we're putting them in photography camera bodies. Now, when it comes to the case of something like the Sony a7 IV, where it's a true hybrid camera that I use, both when I do professional photography and do professional video, I use this camera all the time. So I get why it's in a photography camera body, but now we're getting cameras that are, video only, cameras like the Sony FX3, the FX30, and then you look at stuff like what the Blackmagic is doing with their Blackmagic Pocket cameras. Even though these cameras are video-centric cameras that you're only going to buy to shoot video on, we're putting them in photography camera bodies. Now, the reason why I don't like photography camera bodies is that these camera bodies are meant for taking photos. So a lot of the ergonomics are made out of just put the camera in front of your eyes so you can take a picture, and that's how you get stable shots with cameras like these. But when you look at a video-centric camera, like for example, I have the Sony FS5 right here. This camera is my favorite video camera of all time. The only thing I don't like about this camera, which might sound like a big deal, which is the sensor on it. This camera has a really old contrast-based detect autofocus sensor on it, so I'm not a huge fan of it. If they just release the same exact camera, same exact specs and everything, and they just put a phase detection sensor on here, I would be completely happy with it. This camera pretty much does everything I want. It has amazing amps, so you can plug in 2 XLR imports into this camera. It has external battery, it has DC power in, it has internal ND filters. It has everything you need for a video camera. And you might say that, well, that you should just buy an FX6. And the FX6 is an amazing camera, but the thing is that it's a $6,000 camera. And the thing that's happening with Sony right now is that they're constantly releasing new cameras, which might seem like a good thing, but at the same time, they're constantly cannibalizing their older products. Like you look at something like the Sony a7S III, which is a great camera that came out. When it came out, it was cutting edge. And now they came out with so many new cameras like the FX3 right afterwards, where it just cannibalized the a7S III. Then they came out with the FX30 that also has some specs and features that cannibalize the A7S III. Even the A7 IV has features like focus breathing compensation, has like that focus mapping, it has like a bunch of new features that the A7S III doesn't have, even though A7S III costs a lot more than this camera. But besides those points, that's a different discussion for another day of Sony cannibalizing their own products. But the problem I have with cameras like the FX3, FX30, and the Blackmagic cameras is that the ergonomics on them are pretty much shit. I want to show you guys the announcement photo for the FX30. Just look at this right here. Look at this guy holding this camera. Like this hurts for me to watch. Like he looks like he's about to get carpal tunnel just holding the camera right now. And you might say that, oh, well, if you buy a camera like the FX3, FX30, then what you have to do is you have to get a cage for it, you have to get a grip for it. Oh no, the battery on it also sucks. You have to buy a dummy battery for it, then you gotta get a V-mount battery, you gotta attach that to it. Oh wait, the screen on it also sucks. So you gotta buy an external monitor for it, and then you gotta connect it, and you have to get another battery for that one. And the whole thing just becomes so much more complicated than it needs to. If they, besides just taking these amazing video specs and putting them in photography camera bodies, they put them in like smaller, I don't expect them to, make a $2,000 camera that's, shaped like this camera. But if they just try to make like a smaller version of this camera, I feel like it would make such a better videography experience for the user end. Now, the reason why I love this camera isn't because of the image quality or the autofocus or any of the specs, really. It's just more about the external features of this camera. Now, when it comes to FX3, FX30, it does have that grip on it that you can attach to it so that you do get the XLR audio on it, which I don't mind that much. But one of the big things that a lot of people don't talk about is the power. Now, when it comes to any of these cameras, any of these video cameras, it can be like something like the FS5 that's, a cinema camera, or even something like a camcorder. We got this old camcorder from Sony right here, and it comes with this tiny battery. And this battery might last you, a couple of hours, but you might be like, you know what? I want a battery that's going to last me, all day, maybe multiple days. Then what you can do is you can just buy a bigger battery. Like this is a tiny F30 battery, I think. Right? Yeah, this is an F330 battery. This is really old, from the 90s. But they still make these batteries and still use these batteries. So if I don't want that battery, I can buy a big battery like this. And I can easily attach it to this camera, and boom. Here, let's turn it on actually. By the way, I want to make a video on this camera, but this is a very old camera that's broken right now, so I can't really use it, but as you can see, we got power, and this camera still works, and you have a big battery on it that will last you probably a whole week of use, which is so amazing. But when it comes to photography cameras, you're just stuck with the battery that it comes with. Like if you want a bigger battery on this camera right here, you're out of luck. You just have this tiny little battery that it comes with. And since the battery is internal, you cannot replace the battery on it. The workaround people have on this is to just get a dummy battery. So you buy like a $20 battery online that has a wire coming out of it. Then you attach it to the bottom of the camera. You take the battery door off, which, makes it so that it's not weather sealed anymore. And then you have to buy an expensive V-mount battery that you attach the dummy battery into, and now you have another whole battery that you have to remember to charge, you have to bring with you, and if any of those parts fail, then you're screwed out of luck. Now, this might not sound like a big deal, but honestly, if you're doing a lot of videography stuff, and especially if they're multiple days in a row, just using these tiny batteries is not enough. Because the batteries on even something like the A7 IV will last you like 2 to 3 hours. But the large battery that I have on the Sony FS5 will actually last you like a couple of days. So if you just buy a couple of these and just charge them up, you're good for a whole week. While with the Sony FS5, I constantly have to be changing batteries and charging them. And you have to buy a bunch of them to make sure they're charged. It's just a complete pain in the ass. Another thing that cinema cameras have when it comes to power is that they usually have a DC port in them. So if you're like doing like a long form recording or any type, then you can just plug in a power cable right into the camera and just record without any problems. But with the photography cameras, you gotta do the same thing where you buy a dummy battery and then connect that to the wall. And since it's like a $20 cheap little thing that you bought, it could just break one day and then you're screwed out of luck. Again, just having everything just on the camera makes so much more sense to me than to just, just make a video-centric camera, put on a photography body, and then just expect everyone to, build a complete rig around it. Now, things that if you are someone that wants to build a rig around these cameras, then just buy a photography camera like a Sony A7S III or something, and then just rig that up. What's the point of buying something like an FX30 or FX3 where it's still like a photography camera, but they removed all the photography aspects out of the camera? We're gonna take this video camera and turn it into a video camera by modifying it up. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, the fun thing is that when Sony was first making mirrorless cameras, they were actually experimenting a lot. They were using a bunch of different camera body designs in order to make a mirrorless camera that was a photography camera. Then they were making like a DSLR style camera that was also a mirrorless camera, which is a camera that's coming in the mail right now. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, and we're gonna be making a whole video about this older, weird Sony mirrorless camera that, you know, they never continued making more of. But one of the cameras they made that was very interesting was the Sony Nex VG cameras, which were pretty much, you know, their next cameras, their mirrorless cameras, which ended up becoming like their A6000 cameras that were like, you know, these tiny mirrorless, you know, APC cameras, but they actually put in a camcorder body. Now, this isn't one of them, because I'm trying to get my hands on one of these VG cameras, but they're still like very rare and expensive. Like, if you try getting like the bottom lowest version, which is like the VG10, it's like around $300. And if you try getting the top end version, which is the VG900, which was like a full frame camcorder camera, that camera is like around like $900 to like $1,000 still, which makes no sense to me because no one cares or wants that camera. So why is it still so valuable? Maybe it's just because it's so rare, but I don't know. So we're just going to use this camera as an example, but it was like a camera like this, that where it was just, you know, it was just like a camcorder style camera that had an APC mount on there, and you can attach any of your Sony E-mount lenses on there. And I think that's a great step and where to go with these cameras. I think if they built an FX30 that it wasn't this size, but like if it was like the size of this like old camcorder where you can like attach any of your, you know, E-mount lenses on there, I think it would be so much better. You know, first of all, the ergonomics in these like camcorder style video cameras is so much better than, you know, using a photography camera. Like, these cameras they're not meant for making video. So when you're holding it like this, all your footage just ends up being shaky, and like these cameras are just too small and honestly too light to have nice smooth footage out of them. So they have to, you know, put IBIS in them. They have to do digital stabilization in order to have the videos look good. But like with these camcorders, like the image quality already looks straight out of good on them. Like they did have like, you know, steady shot or whatever technology they had on there, but the footage you would get out of them would actually be really stable on them, mainly because of the ergonomics of these cameras. You know, I think if they made like an FX30 or an FX3 that was in this style, that had an interchangeable, you know, lens mount on there, I think it would be amazing, and give us a nice large, you know, LCD screen to go with it, so we can see our footage on there, and give us a viewfinder also, so that if it's really sunny out, we can just, you know, compose our shot like this. And this also gives us like a nice contact point, so that we can, you know, get even more steady shots when we're shooting in the sunlight. And also, if it has some internal ND filters like the FS5 has, which I don't think they would put on there because that would cannibalize the FX6 and FX9 line, because the ND filters would definitely, you know, rack up the price on these cameras. So that one I'm not holding my breath on. But I think just putting like video-centric features on the external body of the camera would make such a huge difference, besides just, you know, getting like a photography camera like the A7S III and then stripping out the photography features of that camera and then being like, oh, this is a video camera now, because you can't really take pictures with it. Even though you can still take pictures with it, but there's no shutter on it or something. So I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me why these cameras exist in the way they do. I think the main reason why the FX30 and the FX3 exist in the way they do is mainly because they look at market research and they see that, oh, everyone is shooting video with photography cameras now, so that must mean people hate video cameras now, which is not true. It's just that the photography cameras are a lot more affordable than interchangeable video cameras like the FX5 right here. So that's why people are buying photography cameras to shoot video with. And a lot of the technology features are just going into photography cameras. Like, you look at something like the FX6, which came out like 2 years ago, but that camera is just completely outdated now because they released cameras like the A7 IV and the A7 R5 that's coming out right now, that's like, you can do 8K video and has like AI autofocus track, and they're putting all these technologies into the photography cameras, and then they're wondering why people are not buying video cameras. But anyways, guys, that's just my opinion on this situation. I just wish that Sony would release more video-centric cameras that look like a video camera and has video-centric features on them, besides just, you know, having a photography camera with the photography features removed. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. If you guys are fine with the photography camera, if you're fine with the FX3 or the FX30 designs, let me know in the comment section below. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But anyways, guys, I make videos every single week, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. And I have a bunch of new exciting videos coming out. I have a lens review on this lens I'm shooting this video with right now. And also I have a interesting Sony camera that's coming on the way, so make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can see that also. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.